Hi, everybody. I wanted to take some time to walk through the stages of the helping process as presented in our textbook. Please don't take this presentation as a reason to not do the reading. That's really not what I'm intending it for. I want to supplement the reading, but what I need to make sure everybody understands about this particular process is that this is vital. This is, if you had to walk away with the top two elements of this class that we're going to apply moving forward, the ethical considerations that we're talking about in Module 6 are one, the stages of the helping process are the other. What's important about the helping process? What you're going to find is that in this class, this is an introduction to concepts that you're going to be using from here on out, whether you stay in the field or move on to something different, whether you pursue this program of study, change majors. The stages of the helping process can go with you anywhere that you go because it applies fundamentally to how we communicate and how we help other people solve problems. This is applicable in sales. It's applicable in any office setting where you're working on a team. It's applicable on a construction site. It's applicable anytime you have two or more people collaborating on working together. Now, the value that it has is also important to understand. That is a fundamental concept of more advanced techniques that you're going to be learning throughout your academic program and throughout the field that you're going to use in every client-related interaction that you have. And if you don't know how to do it, it's going to impact the quality of support that you can provide to the folks that you're working with. This is something that folks in this course sometimes like to overlook. And I think there's a couple reasons. One is it is reading intensive. You have to know the right words. You have to know the right terms. And we're going to go into a little bit more about why that is as we move forward. But the biggest thing that we have to remember is there's a reason that we have a process. There's a reason that we have a common shared language about how we address these things. What we're doing here is something different than what we've done as helpers in the past. Many of you come to this program with some experience within the field at a paraprofessional level or a paraprofessional level, kind of sideways to what you eventually want to do. And you're going to recognize a lot of these things as you go forward. There's things that you've used in the workplace that you may have been trained in and that you see others using in the workplace. But all of us are here because we like to help and we have some kind of aptitude for it, right? We've been described in our lives as good listeners. We're the people that folks go to. I had one student last term refer to herself as the workplace mom. She worked in an entirely different field, but she was the one people brought their problems to for assistance, guidance, okay? And we're here because we like it and we're probably kind of good at it already. And sometimes that means we can sort of overestimate or misapply the skills that we currently have and assume that they're equal to the professional tasks that we have in front of us. What we want to do by adopting this helping process and understanding how to do this is bridging the gap between being good helpers, helpful people, and being professional helpers. What's the difference? Home improvement. I can fix a clogged toilet. I can use a plunger. That's probably, and I can fiddle around a little bit with the chain. I know how to jiggle the chain, right, if the toilet isn't flushing the right way. Looking at the picture we have in front of us, there are jobs that, for me, as just a person who might be a little handy, are too big for. I don't have the right tools. I don't have the right experience. I don't have the right perspective on how to do the job. I need those tools, or I need to call in a professional who has them. So what we're doing here by starting to integrate the helping process into our mindset is building the toolbox to handle the bigger jobs and to do it professionally. So first step in the process is preparation. We have to be ready. Now, what does this mean? For a lot of us who've already helped people in our own lives, we've got folks coming to us and saying, hey, I really need to talk to you. And sometimes we're going to do that right away. What we're doing as professional helpers in most cases is we're going to have an appointment process. We know this is coming up. We know the type of person that we're meeting with based on their need. We know where we're going to go. Was this going to be a meeting in an office setting? Is this going to be a meeting in the home? Do we have the right resources? For instance, if we're going to a home-based visit and we're going to do, for instance, a play-based intervention with a child or with a family, do we have the right tools? Do we have the right toys? The trunk of my car when I did home-based work was full of 3 to 4 different gym bags of different types of materials that I used, documentation that I needed to have, forms that needed to be filled out. A lot of that stuff now you can do on a tablet. But you got to go in knowing that you have what you need. Safety. I've been in some places where I've had to say, I'm not going to have this meeting here. One example, there was a walk-up apartment, a 3-story walk-up apartment, in which the front room had been rented out to a different family who was living in the front room of this apartment, and they had blocked off with 2x4s access to get from the apartment in which we were meeting to the front room where the front door was, meaning that we had one way out, and they were running a old propane heater that did not have a safety cutoff. So I didn't meet there, and we had different conversations. Okay, that wasn't safe. Sometimes we think about safety, we're just thinking about personal protection in regards to a client that might become violent or agitated. Right, but environmental safety matters as well. Even if we are in an office setting, what kind of client are we working with? When I worked in juvenile justice, I made sure that my desk was aligned in a way that when the client came in and sat, I was between the client and the door. If anything went wrong, if anyone became too escalated, I had the ability to get out first. Right? Are you safe? Is your client safe? How are you planning to manage your documentation? Like I said, if you're in the field, when are you going to write down what you wrote, what you did? Are you going to take handwritten notes? If so, how are you locking them up? Right? Most states require you to have 2 to 3 different locks on documentation if you're not, actually, even if you're in the office. So I would actually have a locking briefcase that was locked within the trunk of my car, right? In which I would keep any notes that I had when I was going. And if you had a laptop that you're taking notes on, then those also have to be password protected, right? So you've got to have all these levels of security. You have to be prepared for those things because you have to protect the confidentiality of that client should someone break into your car. Okay? Had a buddy of mine have his laptop stolen. He doesn't work in the field, he works in finance. And he had to go through all of these different protocols to prove that no one could access the data that was on his laptop because at some point another colleague of his had their laptop stolen and had written down all their passwords on a Post-it and had them sitting on the or taped to the laptop. So whoever got the laptop also got all the documentation. Right? So we have to make sure that we are protecting confidentiality, that we know how and when we're going to document our visit, and that we're going to protect that information that we have. What are we doing to make the client feel comfortable? And this runs the gambit. I've had folks who make sure they have scented candles in their office so the client can feel relaxed, and I've had others who make sure they have no odors in their office to make sure the client can feel relaxed, right? So there's some level of variability here. Exploring the problem. We're only going to touch on this very briefly here because we're going to go more into it in depth in a future unit and more importantly in future courses. So you're really going to dive into this in HSE 215, right? So for many of you, that's right around the corner. But we have to make sure that we have the ability to explore what's going on. A good helper is a good detective. A good helper can find out what's going on the surface and what the underlying social, economic, developmental needs of the client are that are impacting the challenges that are currently being faced. And let me go back to that for a moment because we want to make sure that this is helping us design the appropriate interventions, and the interventions piece is what we're going to explore more in a future date. Okay, what do we do in those sessions? In those sessions, helping is a verb. When we're talking about step 3 intervention strategies, helping is a verb. We are not just here to listen, and we are absolutely not here to give advice. What we're here to do is practice. We're here to practice skills that the client can use to make sure they don't need this again in the future. And that may take a long time. And it may not work the first time, and they may need help in different areas. But our ultimate goal is to help the client be able to be their helper, right? So we don't want to do 4, but we want to make sure that we're building interventions that are helping the client build the skills. Those are going to be short-term goals, long-term goals. How do I get towards what I want? If you have a client coming in for housing assistance, we want to make sure that we're helping the client know how to access the resources they need on their own and build the skills that they need to prevent the need for housing assistance in the future, which means that's work, right? Now, we want to make sure that we're doing this in collaboration and not dictated to the client. The goals and the interventions the clients are coming up with, the goals for sure, the interventions are more on us. The goals for sure that the client wants to accomplish are going to be much more motivating if those are the goals that they have a say in developing. And we can help refine them, and we can help make them realistic and measurable, and we can make them, but we want to make sure that the client has a voice in that process. Then another major difference between what we're doing as professional helpers and what we're doing as helpful people is that we have a plan for this service to end. It is a service. We are doing a job. Our relationship with a client is a professional one. And just like we know when, if we have a contractor come out to our house and build us a room in the basement, or if we hire someone to work on the car, we know when the end of that is, and when the end of that process is in those scenarios, when the problem is fixed or when they tell us they can't, and someone else has to step in. It's not terribly dissimilar, although we don't want to necessarily look at things as problems to be fixed. We do understand that there's a time in which the transition needs to happen where the professional relationship ends. So this can be, okay, you came in for housing assistance, we've helped you secure stable housing, and now we're going to refer you to a different agency or a different element of our own agency that's going to help you maintain. Maybe a client that you're working with as a case manager and they've reached the end of the goals that they've established with their therapist that we're supporting. And it's time for them to transition to from once weekly visits with their therapist with once weekly interventions from the case manager to checking in once a month or once a quarter with a therapist with no case management services. We've got to make sure that we know when those things are going to happen. It may be that the appropriate service that they need is no longer one that we can provide. That service is going to end. That relationship is going to end. Now, of course, relationships end on our personal helpers as well. But this is going to be happening in a meaningful and planned manner. And everyone is going to know from the outset that there's an end to this service. When we're looking at interventions and we're looking at goals, we should have an end date in mind or an end skill set in mind. What am I going to be able to do measurably at the end of our relationship that's different from what I can do now? Right? Is this we're going to increase my skill to do X by 20% as evidenced by the fact that I maintained stable housing for 12 months. And that's the end of ours. Or is it that I need help working on how to actually have a conversation and share with the landlord, the property owner, the challenges that I'm having, the issues that I'm having, or I just don't know how to make the phone call to Catholic Charities to get that stipend that I need to bridge housing from this month to next. But at the end of the day, literally, what we're going to end up with is a situation where the client has either met the goals that they have or that the client has been referred out to somebody else. Now, the other one that we're seeing here, we've got planned, which discussed, they've met the goals, referral, we're no longer the right person to help. And then we also have interrupted, and then they stop coming. This is one that really used to bother me in my juvenile justice work, is clients doing really well in building their skills, and then their family is evicted from their home, right? And they end up having to move in with Aunt so-and-so in, 4 counties away outside of my catchment area, and I can no longer provide that service, right? Or they simply stop seeing the use in coming, or if we have clients that are engaged in substance abuse behaviors, that they may relapse or become involved with law enforcement, all kinds of reasons. Ultimately, what's important that we recognize is that we have to have a plan for termination of services, and that's an important distinction between being a professional helper and a personal one. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to review what we've got here and just have the big picture. So we've got preparation stage. Exploring the problem, intervention strategies, and ending the services. Okay. Now, this information is contained in your book, and I strongly encourage you to read it. And I want to make sure that you understand how to translate this information into your milestones. One of the largest areas in which students struggle grading-wise in the final project submission is not relating the stages of the helping process to the agency in which they hope to work, which is one of the rubric requirements. So if you don't have a grasp of this concept right now, and after you complete the reading, you continue to struggle understanding and how to relate it to the work that you're doing, then I definitely want you to reach out to me so we can go into more detail and clarify it for you. As always, feel free to reach out with any questions at s.matthews@snhu.edu. And thanks for taking the time to review this with me.